Paul Mort, thank you for being here, brother. I really appreciate it. Across the pond. Thank you.
No problem, my friend. I'm excited. Yeah, I love these time difference things because I'm just about to finish my day and you're kind of just starting your day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you still have the energy like you just woke up, so I love that.
I do. I do indeed, and I need it because my next stint is taking the kids to the beach, so I'll need way more energy here than I will for jiu-jitsu later.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, and you got some jiu-jitsu later. I love it. I love it.
Man. Well, I call it jiu-jitsu. Some people will call it free chiropractic.
Yeah, no doubt. I tested my jiu-jitsu skills a few times, and my body felt unlike it has felt doing just about anything. Just like all the back, your ribs were sore, like everything.
Right?
Yeah. I'm sure your body gets used to it a little bit, but yeah, it's an amazing workout. That's for sure.
It is indeed.
So tell me here, brother, we have the podcast Championship Leadership, and first and foremost, what comes to mind for you when you think of that phrase or when you hear that phrase, championship leadership?
Oh, that's a great question. So championship for me would be a kind of winning, or at least attempting to win something. So an aim of winning something, and leadership is for me, example. That's it. Setting an example for whoever it is that chooses to follow. That's it, really. Or in your kid's case, for whoever doesn't choose to follow, because you're the one. So yeah, that's it really. So championship, winning, or at least trying to win, attempting to win, and leadership, example. That's it. Setting the standard.
Yeah, I love it. And you talked about it a little bit, was, for somebody to follow. Yep. And one of the most simple definitions I've seen of leadership is the ability to get people to follow you. Yeah. And so who are some of the people that come to your mind when you think of leaders? And
dude, you know what? This is a great question. And I got asked this. This is a really interesting question because last week I did an interview with Esquire magazine, right?
Yeah.
Who would have ever thought the day would come and Esquire came knocking on Paul Mort's door? And they asked me a bunch of questions, but some of them were kind of lead questions. Yeah. They were like, so are some of your kind of examples of leaders, like people like Jocko Willink and people? I was like, well, yeah, listen, I love what those guys have to say, and they can light my fire sometimes, but no.
Yeah.
Some leaders for me, if we're going to talk names, Byron Katie is probably my favorite of all time. You probably talked about it on the podcast. Byron Katie is, out of all of the things that I've done in the past, all of the studies, the courses, the trainings, the teachings, the mentoring, I have learned the most and continue to learn the most from Byron Katie, which is really interesting because everything you need to know about what Katie teaches is available for free. Yet I've invested a lot of money in. Like, I went to the 9-day school for the work and I learned so much. And that took for me the whole, and this is the thing about what I think for men especially, the whole message of leadership seems to be through suffering, and seems to be about how much you can make shit hurt and how hardcore you can be. And I kind of get that. Listen, I like that hardcore shit. That's why I like boxing. That's why I like MMA. It's why I like jiu-jitsu. It's why I do some of the physical and mental challenges that I do. The SAS selection. I've got one in Africa in November. 5-day SAS selection thing.
That sounds awesome.
And so I like that. But I think that message of having to suffer to be successful, I don't particularly want to live that way, and I don't think it's necessary. And Byron Katie is always the reminder for me that it doesn't have to hurt. So Byron Katie is my all-time leadership hero. And you know what, Nate? As regards to everything else, you know what? I don't really have anyone that really springs out to mind to me. And I think it's because I'd like to say it depends. So I'll see that there's no one person that I say, oh, I model him and I model him. It just depends on where I'm at sometimes. Do you know what I mean? If I'm into the jiu-jitsu phase, which I am now, I'll be looking at jiu-jitsu leaders. So my jiu-jitsu coach, Alex Enlund, who's coaching in the UFC on Sunday, just gone in Germany. Yeah. And then if I'm into boxing, I'll be looking at boxing coaches and boxers that I really like to watch. So I don't have anyone that's like, yeah, I really follow and kind of almost worship this guy. That doesn't really exist for me now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's, I don't know. I mean,
what I'm really trying to say is I'm really fickle.
Yeah. So you said worship. I don't know if I think of like worshiping somebody is necessarily actually what I would consider, leadership.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say Byron Katie, because, you can lead in so many different ways, and there's really no one way to lead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your style, I'm sure, has been molded by, like you said, all the different people that have been influencing.
100%, all of it. That's why I can't really think of anyone, because I'm just constantly, it's like you constantly learn, you're constantly modeling. Some people are probably leading you and you're not even aware of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what kids are like. The kids aren't even aware that they're copying your behavior.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're watching and they're taking notes constantly, and you don't even know it until. And
I'm probably doing that to somebody else as well. I'm probably doing it right now with some of the questions that you're giving me here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think I can definitely think of people in my life, like growing up, that will come to mind as leaders. Mentors is another word you could use for that. John Maxwell was the first person that really brought leadership, the term, to life for me, because he kind of became the guru inside of leadership. And I kind of feel like leadership has played itself out a little bit through the 90s and 2000s. It was a pretty popular term, but it's to create a following, to do what you are doing in Unstoppable. Like, so how did you take where you started to where you are today? And maybe just tell us I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more of your story and how you got to where you are today.
So it's interesting because I tell this story quite a lot. So I've kind of got good at condensing it down so it's not boring. I mean, it's not that boring anyway, because I've done a lot of mad shit.
There's nothing boring about you, bro.
You mustn't have spoken to my wife yet. So December 2014, I was in a position where I was stood on an edge of a cliff ready to jump. My wife was literally the only thing or the only person that could stop me from jumping. And she didn't say, think of the kids, right? She said to me, think of the kids. And at this point, I was like, well, I'm just a dick to them anyway. Like, I'm awful to be around. And she said to me, these are the words that changed. She said, imagine the kids, your two kids growing up as the kids at school whose dad killed himself. So that changed everything. But it's interesting because at that point in my life, I had everything. I had a house in England where I lived. I had a 4-bedroom villa in Malaga, Spain. I had a successful business. I had a big-ass car, / dick extension. I had 2 beautiful kids, a lovely wife. I didn't have to work all that much because I had a business that I built, so it was fairly automated. I had a supplement company. And I couldn't figure out why I was still miserable. I couldn't figure out why I was still almost dying on the inside. I felt empty on the inside. I didn't really feel anything. And I had been diagnosed bipolar as well. So it was kind of just this, why do I still hate my life when I've got everything that I ever wanted, or everything that I thought I ever wanted? So in this place, I was like, it was almost like I'd sacrificed everything just to live this almost somebody else's version of success. I never really thought about it. You just think, oh, well, 8-hour work week, 4-hour work week, loads of money, be able to do what you want when you want. This is it. But I kind of sacrificed relationships. I sacrificed my mental health. I was fat. I certainly wasn't as sexy as I am right now. But everything was just, my marriage was falling apart. I'd missed the first 2 years of my son's life, not necessarily through work, but I just wasn't there mentally. I wasn't present. I was all over the place. I sacrificed friendships. There was a bunch of things that I'd sacrificed just to get into this, what some people from the outside would call a perfect life. Because I'd sacrificed everything, I couldn't really feel anything. I'd made myself I created like an island. I was just isolated because I thought that's what you had to do. So from then, I ended up inside of Wake Up Warrior, where I met you.
Yep.
I ended up at Byron Katie School for the Work. I ended up in a program called Strategic Coach. I've ended up in a bunch of different programs. And I'm not going to say it was an overnight success story. It's probably taken me the first 2 years of this journey, from 2014 to 2016, even 2017 was a bit of a roller coaster. I finally figured out kind of who I was, and I was up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So I would do well for a few months, and then I'd be out for a few months. In, out, shake it all about. Do you guys have the hokey cokey where you live?
Oh, yeah, man. You kidding me?
Hokey pokey? Yeah, I didn't know that was it. Bro. So I was in, out, shake it all about. And then an incident actually happened where you were there. You were there, where I had to get into this ice bath, which incidentally, that whole thing would be no problem now. It's weird that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was in there. I was put into this situation that I didn't want to be in, and I basically pussied out of it. I basically walked away, and I was like, nah, this is not for me. And for about 8 hours of this day, I constantly mentally destroyed myself. I'm such a pussy. I've shown myself up in front of all these men. I've let myself down. I've let my family down. I'm a quitter. I'm a loser. I'm all of this. So I'm in this negative pit that I've been in several times before. And then I was just able to reframe it. My buddy I was with had a camera guy with me, and he said, Paul, didn't you just choose not to suffer anymore? And I'd never even considered that before.
Yeah.
And that just sparked another journey in me. I'm like, struggling is normal. I still struggle now, but suffering is completely optional.
Yeah.
So now I would take on hardcore challenges like that, and I'd be like, well, I can quit anytime I want. That's how I've managed to get, honestly, this is how I've managed to get through some of the SAS stuff. This is how I've managed to get through half marathons with no training, fights, 12 rounds of sparring at a time in boxing. This is how I've managed to get over these height challenges and jump out of airplanes. Because a few months before I jumped out of an airplane, I couldn't even get on one without drugs. Like nothing at all.
Yeah, wow.
I couldn't get on at all. So I've managed to do all of this stuff just because I actually give myself permission to quit. As long as I start. So all I do is with everything that I do now, and this is my whole thing, I'm like, just start. I am happy. I will step out. I don't want to train jiu-jitsu now because I'm tired. I will commit to the warm-up. And I'll always have in the back of mind, I can quit anytime I want. Quitting's okay. For me, it's okay. And what tends to happen is I'll find a way to love what I'm doing. I can't always do what I love, but I can always find a way to love what I do. I'll always find something. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, actually, quitting's okay. And then this just takes away the suffering for me. And guess what I do? I quit way less. I quit way less. Because now I've given honestly, people say this all the time. You shouldn't give yourself an out. Quitting isn't an option. I'm like, quitting's always an option. It always has been. It always will be.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because
you know what? Yeah, I did this thing the other week, right? It was called the Via Ferrata Extreme. It was a heights challenge, right? Never liked heights, real high. And they had this thing called the Infinity Bridge. And it's across a gorge, right? And it's one single wire and then two single wires for your hands. So you're kind of tiptoeing across it.
Yeah.
And in the past, half of the people that did this challenge actually didn't even start. And my whole thing now is I'm just going to start. At any point, I can turn back around. And once I get in, same with boxing, I'm just going to spar with this, guys. I'm just going to fight. Once I'm over the ropes, once I'm in on the bridge, if I know that I can turn around, at least that's going to get me started. And once I get started, it's never as bad as I thought it was going to be. That's it.
I love it.
That's kind of my whole thing now. I'm like, what if I just started? And sometimes I teach my guys this. I'm like, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? I'm like, well, wouldn't it be fun to find out?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm willing to quit now because I'm like, wouldn't it be fun to find out how I'd react to that? Wouldn't it be fun to find out if I get criticized or whether that works or not, or whether I fail or whether I get rejected? I'm like, wouldn't it be fun to find out? I'm curious now. And this takes away the whole pain, hardcore, bite people's faces, etc.
Yeah, it's such a powerful point that you make. Just start and you can quit at any moment because I do. I come into these events and I just like, there is no option to quit. Like, yes, I can quit, but what am I going to do? Like, if I'm at Kokora,
especially when you're halfway in, because you've got to turn back around.
I'm like, what am I going to do? Go sit in a hotel while they finish the event? Like, why would I do that?
Yeah. And the funny thing is, Nate, right? The funny thing is, I think that when you think that you can't quit, it stops a lot of people from even starting various things. When you think that you can't quit. But for me, if I'm like, you know what? I'm giving myself permission to turn around if I need to.
Yeah.
But once I get started, it's never, ever as bad as I thought it would be. Ever. Getting punched in the face is nowhere near as bad as getting punched in the face. And it's the same with everything. So quitting kind of just almost doesn't become a thing anymore, because it's just, if I get started, I'm good to go. And you know what, Nate? Having fun is okay.
Yeah.
Us men tend to get caught in this, kill people.
Well, dude, you want, and so many want to proclaim what they're going to do before they do it. And then once they do that, and then if they quit, then it's like, oh man,
then it's a whole hate on yourself.
And you're like, everybody's going to think that I'm a failure.
Yep.
And like you said, the thoughts and stories, and you just like, no one really gives a at all.
Because they're too busy worrying about themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that, man. So, well, tell me, inside of Unstoppable, we were talking about this right before we started, but you know, you said you've impacted over 200 men inside of one of your programs, and you have a lot going on. You just ran an event for women, and being a leader is the ability to get people to follow you. And obviously you have been able to do that. You are what I would call a championship leader. And
thanks,
so
buddy.
we'll talk about this and how have you created that for yourself? Obviously you set the example for sure.
Yeah. And that's pretty much, Nate, I've been able to build this business just by getting my own shit together and showing people. That's all I've done. Because I wasn't always inside of Unstoppable. I actually have a marketing business too. So it's not just a coach that just coaches. I have another business that's successful. So I basically got my shit together, showed people that I got my shit together, and then they're like, oh, I want a piece of that too. Can you show me how? Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
Honestly, that is as simple as it gets in this game of leadership and coaching. Get your own shit together, prove yourself to yourself, and then let everybody see. That's it.
Yeah.
If people can't, the thing is, if people can't see what I'm doing, then I can't really influence them. I can't lead them unless they can see what I'm doing. It's why my kids both do jiu-jitsu. I don't have to force them to go, but their adherence is certainly higher when they know that I'm doing it. My kids love doing obstacle course races and mud runs. We're doing one tomorrow, actually, because they see me doing them. I don't force them to do it. I'm not preaching to them. I'm showing them they want to join. This is why they like they both dig meditation. They both dig reading and stuff. I mean, they're not total nerds. They still do the YouTube thing and the Xbox thing. But guess where they're copying that behavior? When I'm stuck in my phone like this as well.
Yeah.
So to kind of answer your question, it's I got my own shit together, showed other people, which you could also class as bragging or showing off or just celebrating how I got my shit together. And I continue to do that now. And people naturally, if you are authentic and if you are honest enough to share both your wins and your losses and your struggles, people naturally want a piece of it.
Yeah. Has it always been that way for you?
No. That was part of the problem in the first place. I lied all the time back in the day. That's why I was I forget what I lied about.
And
for some reason,
did you have a following at that time?
I did, but only inside of the making money niche. Yeah. And funny enough, what happened was I also attracted people that were also liars. Yeah. So there was I had a lot of conflict. I just seemed to be in conflict all of the time with people. Because I'd be like, well, you're full of shit. And then I'd look at me around and actually, I'm full of shit. That's why like for me tends to attract like a lot of the time. So I'd attract flaky people because I was flaky. And like I say, I had a following in that making money niche, but they were all as fucked up as me. Yeah. And back then I was only ever talking about making money because the rest of my life sucked.
And so what happened? So what was the turn for you?
The turn for me was definitely that cliff incident.
Cliff.
And I remember
what did you see inside that following for you? So from
those guys started hating on me.
Did they follow you down this path?
No, some of them, but a lot of them got triggered by this because two reasons. Clearly, I was showing them something that they didn't like about themselves. Suddenly, I became this honest guy, but also they were almost, who is this guy? Because I hadn't seen this guy. Because that guy that told the truth and that was honest and vulnerable and open and shared all of it, they'd never met this guy. They'd only ever seen Big Billy Bollocks with a big bank account guy. They'd only ever seen him. So they're almost like, well, who's this guy? And I felt like that as well. Some of these guys, I felt like I was walking on eggshells quite a lot because, I'd attract people in, but because of who I was on the outside was different to who I was when you came into my world. I'd constantly feel like I had to be this guy who was on the outside, the guy that supposedly didn't give a fuck what people thought. Yeah. Now I realize that if you don't give a shit what people think, you don't have to tell anyone. As soon as I hear that, I'm like, well, dude, why are you telling me that you don't give a shit about what people think? Because if you didn't, you wouldn't even need to tell me. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you, it's refreshing when you run into men, women like that, leaders like that, but I think it's so refreshing because it's so rare. Right? Yeah. Like football over here in, I think you call it North American football over there.
It's like egg throwing eggs.
The one you throw and kick to
the way you throw the big egg.
Uprights.
The big egg.
Yeah, the big egg. So there's a football coach. There's a college coach. His name is Dabo Sweeney, and he is like a true leader. He's kind of like what we call a players coach and relates with his players and had great success. But he also is like, he's just unlike anyone else as far as like when something comes up, there's no scandal with him. Everything is up front. Like he's an open book. Everything's on the table. When there's problems in his locker room or with his players, he's in the front of it and leading and owning it and holding his players accountable. And but then, in our world, in the coaching, mentoring world, you hear the stories all the time of the person that is out front one way and then out back and behind the stage maybe a different way.
Yeah, it's almost like that movie that there's a thing on Netflix about Jim Carrey playing this role as a guy. I think he was called Andy someone. He played this role and he actually got lost between who he was and who this Andy guy was.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. And that's kind of what happened to me. I was kind of like, well, who? Yeah, I'm lost here.
Yeah.
I'm lost. Completely lost.
Yeah.
Completely lost.
So where do we go from here? What's a big vision for you? There's one thing to live what you preach, live what you teach, be that example.
Big vision for me. This is always an interesting question, Nate, because I know we always get caught up in the purpose. This purpose conversation seems to be a big thing in the minute. I'm like, listen, there's only two purposes for me. One, to be happy. Two, I'm almost over this bit, is to recreate. That's almost all of our purpose is just to be happy and recreate. But I'm under no illusions, Nate, that what makes me happy will constantly change as I change. As I get older, what makes me happy will change. So big vision-wise right now, it's still that. I just want to be happy. And I've got no problem adjusting what I do to be happy. I've got no problem doing that. Right now, Unstoppable's where it's at. I absolutely adore what I do. I absolutely love helping men, mostly by just living my best. I almost said living my best life there, but that would be super American. That would be like you'd have to check my passport. Holy shit. Yeah, but just pushing myself. Listen, really, you got to think about this. Mate, guys like me and you, we're great at coaching men, but really we get to do it just by living our lives and pushing ourselves. And then people come along for the ride with us, which is exciting.
Yeah, it is.
That's really exciting for me. And that's what makes me happy, because I know we talk about being happy, but I look at what am I doing to be happy all of the time. For me right now, happiness comes from doing. So I'm always looking to do more of the things that make me happy and do less of the things that don't. That's my big vision. Do more things that make me happy, do less of the shit that doesn't. Because in the past, and I'm convinced of this, and still a message that I think gets fed to us guys a lot of the time is, you have to do things you loathe to create a life you love. And I'm like, that's impossible. There's no happy ending to an unhappy journey. There's no happy ending to an unhappy journey. And I've tried creating a life that I would love by doing shit that I loathe. And it's impossible, and it's a struggle, and it hurts, and it's exhausting. So I'm not saying don't do what's required, but there's a fine line between doing what's required and doing shit that you loathe constantly. If there's something that I loathe that's still required, I'm like, who can I get to do this? Do you know what I mean? If there's something that I loathe
that you don't do necessarily what you love to do all the time, you do what
I don't not all of the time. I think that's
what's required
almost impossible.
to get what
I think that's almost impossible. Yeah. I think it's almost impossible to just do what you love all of the time. Listen, that's what got most of us in trouble in the first place.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's possible. But to do what's required is what's required. But I can find a way to love doing what's required. And if I can't, I'll find someone else to do it.
Yeah.
It's that, like, what's the point in it's sometimes when we get into business, I'm like, I didn't get into business to do shit that I hate doing all the time. That's not why I created this business. Sure, you have to do things that make you uncomfortable. Sure, you have to do things that are required. But I can find a way to love that. Listen, I hate running. Last year, I did a half marathon on 2 weeks' notice with no training. I found a way to love it. And do you know how I found a way to love it? I thought all the way through, I'm thinking, oh, I could write an email about this. And then what got me through the last 10 miles, really, was thinking about what I was going to eat when I finished. That's how I found a way to love it. I was able to dial into something else. You know how it is. You can't think about the pain. So I've got two options in that situation, doing what's required. I can think about how much I hate it, or I can find a way to love it.
Yeah, absolutely. What you talked a little bit about what was it? I just lost it. So you are always, so when we're talking about the vision, the purpose, and you're like, I just continue to do what I love to do, or not necessarily what I love to do, but I continue to be happy, to choose to be happy, and continue to do more of that, and also be willing to essentially change. Yeah. And I think
it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
A huge characteristic of being a leader and being a longevity inside of leadership is able to adapt and change. And how have you seen yourself do that over the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, dude, it's I think that because of the way that guys like me and you and the guys listening, because of the speed that we move, I think change happens faster. And I also think I have this thing where I get bored quite quickly. So what I'll tend to do is, and this is how I grow my business and my life, I'll do some things and then I'll be like, meh, and then I'll break it and I'll snap a little bit off and then I'll go again and I'll snap a little bit off and break it and then I'll go again. So it's that's exciting for me though.
Isn't there a fine line between that and like, I'm going to 10X this every single time? It's a new you. You don't even know me. You knew me 90 days ago. You don't know me today.
A very fine line. I think that I actually thought about this morning. And I think the point is that happens to people, and that's happened to me, where I haven't measured back enough. I think it's easy to get obsessed with constantly going this way. And that for me is the fast track to burnout and frustration. So this is something that I learned inside of Strategic Coach. What we do a lot of the time when we're having a 10X this and 10X that is we're always comparing actual progress to ideal progress. And this ideal will always move away. So one thing that I always do on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly basis, is I constantly just look at where I'm at compared to where I started. And then that just gives me gradual growth and gradual build-up. Snap a bit off, break it, go again, snap a bit off. What worked, what didn't work, let's go again. Whereas I think constantly being here, I think that has to be there. Aiming forward has to be there to give you some inspiration. But it also can be exhausting and overwhelming. And I think that's where most people's fear is when they're living in that future all of the time. So what I like to do is I call it measuring backwards and aiming forwards. Therefore, what I do is I collect confidence and self-belief from all these benchmarks, and then I take them forward into the future, which means that I don't really get overwhelmed. I don't really get fear of failure. I don't really get fear of rejection or fear of failure. They're still there, but I don't let them kill me because I've collected, if you like, I've collected and I've collated and I've stacked myself up and basically strapped a set of testicles on, big testicles on, by just looking backwards. So that for me, that's been one of the keys to being able to move fast and also constantly change and constantly adapt. Is I'm always measuring what worked, what didn't work, what would I do different if I was doing it again.
Yeah, how often do you do that? How often do you go through that process?
I measure my wins every day. So I have a process we call it strategic confidence. So every morning we'll write down 3 wins from the day before and how we'll build on it. But for the last 3 months, I've actually been writing down all of my wins for the day, every day. So that could be 10, 20 wins. Because I used to stop at 3. But then I'm also like, it's like saying, oh, no thank you. No more confidence today, please. You know what I mean? So I got like, I'll be like, why am I only writing 3? Fuck it, I'm going to keep going. Win, 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 win. I'm like stacked up on confidence in that. Because all of us want this feeling of achievement, right? But we don't have to wait until the end of a quarter to feel like that. I can feel like that every night.
Yeah,
and then I can feel like that the next morning, and then I can build on it. So I'll do that every day. And then I do it every month. I'll do my 30-day benchmark, my 60-day benchmark. I do the end of every week. What are the 5 biggest wins this week? How am I adjust my behavior going forward? So it's constantly assess where I'm at, review my week, review my day, and then how am I going to adjust going forward? Basically constantly. But I do bigger ones at the end of the week, bigger ones at the end of the month, bigger ones at the end of the quarter, and then a massive one at the end of the year.
Yeah, true leaders, they assess where they're at and what's going well and what isn't, and constantly course correcting and game planning for the future and celebrating the wins along the way. Which is it's a must. Otherwise, you're going to burn out.
Do you know what? The celebrating the wins thing is a funny thing, right? Because whenever I tend to trial a lot of different like journals and planners, right? And I always struggle because it's like, I get to this, you have to answer this question, how are you going to celebrate this win? But then for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I've kind of already planned how I'm going to celebrate the win before I've even won. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'll already have booked the vacation in, and I'll go on the vacation whether I've won or not.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know what it, so I always struggle with that part of how will you reward yourself? I'm like, well, I'm going to reward myself anyway, just for trying. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot to be said for rewarding yourself just for putting in max effort.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think winning is a thing.
In the mirror and know that you did
with
that.
Integrity. Yeah. So for example, I set a financial goal in the last quarter and I didn't hit it, but I certainly got further than I would have if I didn't try.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can be focused on what I didn't hit, or I can be focused on what I did hit.
Yeah.
That's it. And I reward myself anyway. I'm going to Thailand in 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, without my phone for the whole time, which is kind of scary.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no phone, no iPad, no internet, nothing for 2 weeks.
Yeah, you do that. What do you do that quarterly, or you do that?
I do that quarterly, sometimes more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that. I actually do it 1 day a week, every week as well, non-negotiable.
And you're still alive, man. Like you haven't died and the world hasn't stopped.
Nobody dies. I get total refreshment, regeneration. I feel like I just feel totally refreshed and like I'm present. I just get back to being present and be like, actually, what's important here? Because, dude, I'm not Superman. I get sucked into this every now and again like this, and it's attached to my eyelids. And it's very easy to do. It's very easy to do that. Yeah. And I think that especially when it becomes an issue, especially on an evening when you're tired, because then it comes down to willpower. And when you're tired, willpower is non-existent. That bitch is long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I do that every Wednesday, and I do it every, usually once or twice a quarter for at least a week. But this is my first time for 2 weeks, which I'm a little bit intimidated about it, but I'm sure everything will be fine.
I'm sure everything will be fine. Yeah. So do you completely off technology? Do you come to a computer and check anything, or?
Nope, nothing. I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly.
And you just take care of everything you need to before that.
All done before I go. It creates a really high level of urgency. Do you know, like when you're getting to the end of a quarter and you push yourself really hard? Yeah. Well, I create that. If you think about it, I do that once a week, every week. I'm like, well, if I don't get this done, I don't get this boxed off, then I can't have my free day tomorrow. Yeah. It's like that every quarter and every time I do it. Because I'm like, the thing is, I can say I'm only checking email for an hour a day, right? Yeah. I can say I'm going to go in and check my emails for an hour whilst on vacation. But really, I'm doing more than that. I'm checking email for an hour, but whatever happens in that email inbox is coming with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's coming with me. Yeah.
Whatever I've seen on social media, whatever messages I've got, I'm bringing those with me for at least another hour. At least. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to disconnect completely. I'm going to do it because I want to be completely present in this moment and not dragging any of that bullshit with me. Yeah. And listen, what kind of business have I created if I can't leave it for at least a week? It's not a business, really. Yeah. People who have jobs often get to switch off entirely for the week. But us guys that own the business don't get to do it. I'm like, actually, if I can't do that, my business owns me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's powerful. That's great perspective. Yeah. And not a lot of people out there are doing that or have the ability to do that. So that's powerful.
Dude, you know why? Because it's scary. It
Yeah.
is scary. It's intimidating. There's a bunch of resistance. And do you know what got me over the resistance? This is where I first got into it. When I went to the Byron Katie School for the Work, they had an exercise called the surrender exercise. You had to surrender something that made you feel huge resistance about surrendering it. So for some people, it would be cigarettes. For some people, it would be makeup. Obviously, I was one of those as well. But then for some people, it was a cell phone or a laptop or the mini bar, for example.
Yeah.
So I gave up the food from the mini bar because I'm not really a drinker. Gave up the food from the mini bar and I gave up my mobile phone and my laptop. I didn't speak to my family for 9 days, which is a long time.
Yeah, it is.
But it changed my life. That whole experience changed my life. The having no phone changed my life because I realized actually nothing's that bad. People can still get hold of me in an absolute emergency because my wife has her phone.
Yeah.
So I also have, I want to add this. I don't have it with me. I have a little, do you know, like a burner phone the drug dealers use?
Yeah.
I have one of those as well. It's this little Nokia, and all it does is it texts and it calls. That's it. It's so bad that it doesn't even have Snake on it. Remember Snake? Dude, it doesn't even have that on it. And the buttons on it, the buttons that you press are like the whole A, B, C, D, E, F. It's all like that, and the buttons are gigantic because it's for old people. Yeah,
we got our daughter one of those here recently because we didn't want her to do anything but call or text. So she's got one of those, and it's
dude, it's got like an SOS button on the back, and it sounds like an ambulance going nah, nah, nah. And sometimes I'm in cinema and I press it by accident. Everyone's like, "What the fuck is that?" Yeah, but that means that I can still be in touch with people if I need to really call someone emergency. Like 5 people have that number, and none of them are to do with business or finance or work or anything. But then I had to buy a watch because I didn't know what the time was when I didn't have my phone. I was telling, what time is it? Hammer time.
Well, hey, as we come to this come to a close here, I want to, as a leader, as a champion leader, there's always a point in your life, and I know you talked about the cliff being a moment, a huge moment for you, and maybe that's the moment. But let's maybe even come within the last really from the I would say from the moment and maybe that's the moment, and I don't want to spoil it here, but you talked about not going in the ice or quitting, and then how you and then shifting your perspective to how you looked on that, but from what you've built with Unstoppable Bastards, is there a moment where you really kind of define where you are today? Like, because there's had to have been a time where you're like, you know what, like this just isn't working. This isn't what I want. This isn't going how I thought it would or hoped it would. Is there a moment there where a true leader, instead of going left, goes right when everybody else is going left?
There are a bunch of times that I can imagine, and this one's a little bit corny, but last December I had a fight, all right? I had my 3rd fight, boxing, and it was the first time in the small gloves. Before I did like charity shows, and I don't wear a head guard, but I had the big ass 16-ounce gloves on. In December, I fought in 10-ounce gloves, and I fought a guy. Bearing in mind, I've only been boxing for 2.5 years, maybe 2 years, 2 and a little bit years. I fought a guy who was actually a boxing coach, and he'd been boxing for 10 plus years. And I took on the fight, even though everybody told me not to. And in the 2nd round, I got put on my ass in front of 400 people in a full room. And in that moment, I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about myself because I got back up. I didn't win the fight, but I won the 3rd round. And at the end of the fight, this coach was literally passed out on the floor because he was so exhausted from how hard I pushed him. And I actually learned more about myself in that loss and in that getting up off my ass after getting put down and taking on this guy that I had no right to be even fighting. Yeah. I learned more about myself then than any of the other things that I've done apart from the cliff incident and the ice bath incident are up there. But that incident there was the most recent one where I'm like, actually, you know what? I think sometimes, Nate, we need to be reminded, not by other people, but we need to remind ourselves that we're the real fucking deal. And sometimes I need to be reminded that I'm the real deal, because as a leader, especially of a lot of people, a lot of men like I am, you get a lot of compliments come your way. You get a lot of heat as well, which is kind of second nature to me now. It's like, whatever. Like, I get a lot of heat, but I get a lot of compliments. And sometimes it's easy for them to just brush over you and wash over you. And you don't realize how much of an impact you're having on people. But I think often when we go through these challenges and when we go through losses, for it, everyone says this, you learn more from your losses than you do from your wins. But when we go through this, it's nice to be reminded that actually, you know what? Yeah, I am the real fucking deal. It's easier to, I can look myself in the mirror and it's another reminder, you know what? I am actually the real deal. And this is how, for me, I think as a leader, it's important that you have a lot of self-belief. And that just comes from benchmarks. And that just comes from stopping and looking at, you know what? Yeah, I am the real fucking deal. I have been through some shit. I've won a few times. I've lost a few times, but I'm still going. I am the real deal. So that will be it for me, getting put on my ass in front of all those men.
I love it, man. It's so powerful because I can relate. Like I have some, what I guess you would consider losses for myself in the last year. And it's all on how you pick yourself up, how you respond to those and what you do moving forward from those. And absolutely a ton of lessons to be learned. Almost
what's fun, mate.
Wins. What's that?
I've actually been off at that. I've been off at to fight that guy again in October.
Yeah. You going to do it?
I'm not sure. I don't need to. I don't feel like I've got anything to prove, but I'd love to knock him out. The dick. The dude's like this all the time. Really insecure, big mouth, little dick. Yeah. I might, but I won't be doing it. I did that last one over 3 rounds. 3 rounds isn't enough. Like I'm an endurance. I need a longer. I want to kind of go to war and go and take him in the trenches. Yeah. So if I can get the fight over 6 rounds, and this is really, a leader shouldn't really admit this, but if my wife lets me do it, then I'll do it.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Leaders have teams, they have counsel, they have others around them to help them make the right decisions. So I love it, brother. Well, let's close this out real quick. We talked about a leader having the ability to create a following or for others to follow them, and you've done that for yourself. What is a way that those listening, watching can follow you and continue to follow you on your path and be led from afar?
So the guys that are listening, it's great that you're still here, because at this point I've normally offended a few people and they've threw their headphones down and like, screw this guy, his language is terrible. So if you're still here, the best places to follow me, I've got a book that's almost ready to come out called Fucking Unstoppable, or Effing Unstoppable for you guys that are offended. Fucking Unstoppable. You can find out more about that when it comes out at unstoppablebook.com, or you can just follow me on the old Facebook, Paul Mort, M-O-R-T. And I'm also having a little play on Instagram at the minute, although I'm not.
On the gram.
The jury's still out on Instagram for me. It's a little bit out for me.
Yeah? Not quite all in on the gram yet.
I'm just seeing that I'm seeing that I don't seem to be able to automate it very well. And if I can't automate it, it means I have to hustle. And I don't mind hustle, but I'd rather not. Hustle doesn't allow me to have 2 weeks of holiday in Thailand with no phone and no technology. Hustle doesn't allow me to do that.
You got to bring your video and camera team with you so that they can take those nice shots.
Nobody could have.
Posing.
No one could be around me for that long.
Get the lights.
Dude, do you ever think this on Instagram? I see a guy who's like working out or something. I'm like, who took that photo, dude?
Yeah, for sure, all the time.
If I was with my workout partners and I said, dude, can you just take a photo of me doing like this exercise? They'd be like, piss off. No, dude. Yeah. It's a funny old game, the Instagram. Old game.
It is.
Yeah. And it seems like you have to be on there all of the time to stay relevant. And I'm not being on there all the time. Yeah.
It's the Instagram for sure. Facebook, definitely. It can be exhausting. And sometimes you feel like you have to play the game to some point, but at the same time,
you remember what's important, right?
I don't want to be that guy, right? Yeah. So I'm
you know what I heard? I read this a long time ago, and this is totally off topic, really. But I saw this, and it might have been where dude Steve Krebs said this, and he was like, you can't give your attention to the people that you love whilst at the same time giving your attention to complete strangers. In other words, it's either this or this. Yeah. And I was like, that's very profound. That's
well put.
I can't give my attention. I can't listen listen, I do videos with my kids and shit all the time, but I'm also very aware of the time that I spend on them, because the great thing about kids is that they keep you very accountable. My kids are so good at keeping me accountable. Dad, you said this. Dad, put your phone down. And once, they actually, in the first quarter of this year, when I was trying to get a six-pack, they said, I'd pick up something to eat, and they'd be like, Dad, Daddy, trying to get a six-pack. Yeah, all fun. All fun and games.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
All right, brother. I appreciate you being here, being on time, and having this conversation with us.
Thank you so much, man.
Love to catch up. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nate, dog.
Yeah, brother.